my talk is an exploration of one possibility of what art could be. Of course, something like art, something like defining art is really up for grabs and we can all choose our bets. But a fair understanding of what art could be is that it comes about when each of us, as human beings, reimagine, repackage, reinterpret the things that we see every day as slightly different from or more than what we actually see. This means that all of us are always making art. Why? Because as human beings, we never perceive the world as raw data. We always supply the data we see with memories of the past, our aspirations or ambitions for the future, our hopes for the future, our philosophies, our ideologies, our worldviews. And when we express this repackaged product out of this raw data we perceive as perceptions, we are being artists. And in today's presentation, I will be talking about one form of that repackaging. And I think one of the greatest forms or greatest modes of making art, which is, as you can see, art as home and world. So I'll explore art as it emerges as a balance between the dualities of home and world. And what do I mean by this? Often, when we go out in the world, when we are not at home, we invite memories from our past, from home, from our comfort zones to inform that experience of the outside world. And in that confluence, art comes about. And sometimes you see the opposite happening too, which is that you're at home, but you invite inspirations from across the world and you make what you see in this world in this home more meaningful, and then too art comes about. I know this seems extremely vague and almost meaningless, but I will explore this concept as we go ahead. So let's start with the first category. What do I mean by home in the world? That is, making home in the outside world, and how art comes about then. Let me start with a tale from Buddhism. This has to do with the Buddha's half-brother. His name is Nanda. Buddha returns to his palace, to his town as an enlightened monk, and he starts interacting with his half-brother Nanda, and who is just happily married with a new wife. But Buddha somehow convinces him to get converted to asceticism. But then Nanda's still not over his memories of his wife, and he wants to stay with her. And Buddha takes him through a whole journey and finally convinces him completely that family life is bad and asceticism is good. We do not need to agree with Buddha or accept his method of teaching this, neither do I. But the story is very interesting and it provides a great space for exploration of what art really means. And I'm going to read this instance from Ashwagosha, 1st century Sanskrit poet, one of the first poets, in fact, one of the greatest poets, in fact, in Sanskrit, and his Canto 7, and now he's describing in this the predicament of Nanda, this person who is just been married but immediately forced to become a monk. And remember, Nanda here is on the wrong side, because eventually he will be convinced that a family life is not great for him. But what an artist Nanda is by being in that predicament. Receiving from the mango trees a rain of tiny flowers like saffron powder, he was reminded of his wife and sighed deeply like a newly caught elephant in confinement. He who was accustomed to relieve the grief of those who came for help and to cause grief to those who are proud because he's a prince, was now himself subject to grief. He leant against an Ashoka tree and grieved for his mistress, to whom an Ashoka grove was so dear, and who was the grove of delight to him. So he's out in the forest, and a random Ashoka tree reminds him of his wife because of how pleasant that Ashoka tree back home is to his wife. Perceiving a delicate Priyangu tree, his mistress's favorite, that emerged from the trees as if in terror, He remembered with his sobs his mistress, with her tear-strewn face and pale as the flowers of the Priyangu. And now his tears remind him of her tears and the color of the flowers of this tree, of him, of her. Seeing a cuckoo sitting on the flower-covered crown of a tilaka tree, he pictured it as the coils of hair of his beloved on her white robe as she leant against the parapet of the palace. So the branch of the tree reminds him of the parapet of her palace, the flowers with her white robe, and the darkness of the cuckoo with her hair. When he noticed a blossoming Atimuktaka creeper growing up a mango tree and clinging to it, he reflected, when will Sundari embrace me thus? So all that is happening here is a creeper is going up a tree, and instantly he's thinking about his wife hugging him. And you can see what's happening here precisely. He's somewhere out in the world, but the world, if he had just seen it as it was, would not be a great deal. But it's because he supplies it with memories from home that he becomes an artist. Let's look at another instance, another medium really. And for that we have to travel to Gandhara, which is this region that corresponds roughly to modern Pakistan of today and much of Afghanistan. And it is really important in history because due to its location in this region, it always was open to contact with Europe on the one hand, and much of Asia, especially Central Asia. And a particular period in Gandhara that is very fascinating to historians and all humans alike once we start reading and hearing about it is following the invasion of Alexander the Great from Greece and reign by his successor generals. Artists and sculptors from Greece were left behind and outdid the legacy of Alexander, and this meant that for centuries, 600 to 700 years, they were here making art, but not for Greeks themselves, but for whom we might call Indians and Central Asians. So the home to these people was back in Greece, but the world that they were in, just like in the case of Nanda, was in the world of Central Asia, dominated by invaders and kings from Central Asia, like the Kushanas, the Shakas, the Western Kshatrapas, and so on, and the religions of Buddhism, Vaishnavism, and Shaivism. And here in Gandhara, in this town called Hadda Tepe Shotor, we have this, for example, this Buddha piece itself, which is of this monk, this South Asian Indian monk, as we all know, but stylistically entirely Greek. The smooth cheeks, the flowing robes, the curly hair is entirely Greek. But the interactions, the memory of the home in this new world digs deeper. So this is an attendant of the Buddha called Vajrapani, who is a guard of the Buddha and often accompanies him when the Buddha is meditating. He is a Buddhist god. But look how he's depicted. He's depicted exactly like the Greek god Heracles. Once again, art is made as these people remember their home out in the outside world. Down to the biceps, the abs, the beard, the curly hair, the leopard skin, which in Greek mythology, Heracles would have tamed. Or look at this. This is goddess Hariti, the Buddhist goddess of childbearing and fertility, but she's depicted like the Roman goddess Fortuna, down to her crown, her robe, her cornucopia, or bouquet of gifts. But the most fascinating, perhaps the beautiful signature of Gandharan style comes in this. This is yet another Vajrapani, but this Vajrapani is made to look exactly like Alexander the Great. So this is once again a Buddhist god who is depicted because of the Greek artist's memory of home like a ruler and invader from back home. And right there you have the yin and yang between home and world, allowing the making of art. Now I come to the next category, which is world at home. That is, human beings, while being at home, inviting inspirations from across the world in order to make art. This is an audio, and I was told that it might be a bad idea for copyright reasons. But let's go. Let's skip to the example that I can show you, and that is in the city of Hyderabad. So you can all see this, take this as an invitation, a recommendation from my end to go look at Qutub Shahi tombs. Tomorrow is Sunday, and if you have time, please, and if not seen this, please go do that. So the Qutub Shahi tombs are the tombs of these sultans of the dynasty known as Qutub Shahis who ruled Hyderabad. They are Iranian in descent, but by the time they started producing these projects, they were entirely nativized in Hyderabad and Deccan. And this meant that they were entirely at home in Hyderabad, but the worldly inspirations they drew from came from anywhere, right? And so let's start with this particular tomb. On the ceiling, on the roof of the tomb, to the left, you have a screw-like, cork-like structure, and you can see instantly that it's not all that different from the minar you see to the left, which is called the Jam Minar in Afghanistan, which is also, by the way, the inspiration for the Qutub Minar in Delhi. And look at those club-like, spade-like structures which stand on the motifs that stand on the roof. They look exactly like Christian crosses. In particular, resembling very closely this very old Christian cross from Iran from the 7th century. And this is a dummy arch, if you will, because there's no door, it's just an arch carved onto the tomb. I tried very hard with my rudimentary PowerPoint skills to align this Hindu temple pillar or pilaster to be aligned with that arch. And you can see how the cuts of the pillar almost mirror each other. Or look at that rectangular motif above the arch. How different is it really from the rectangles you see it in the picture to the left, which is from Roman architecture, this particular example being from the Pantheon in Rome. Or the tiny lotus bud standing atop the arch, which is almost an exact inversion of a similar lotus that you find across Hindu temples in India. This one particular one, once again, being from Karnataka. And once again, the artists who made these tombs, whose home was Hyderabad, did realize that they could not make art if they transcended that home and allowed the world to come to their home, for the yin and yang to really rotate. And that's how art is made. So thank you for this opportunity to give this talk. And I tried to really put in a bit of home and world situation there too. So this is my room in Berkeley, so I tried to take all my things from home there, and similarly, making that my home, I let things from across the world come there. So thank you for my TED talk, and I really did not imagine that I would say this on a stage and not at the end of a Twitter thread, ironically. Thank you.